My sister-in-law had been pregnant for 15 months. Her belly looked unnaturally swollen, stretched tight like it might split. When I begged her to see a doctor, my mother snapped at me like I committed some kind of sin. "My grandson is a miracle," she said. Like a blessing straight out of the Bible. Miracles take time. I didn't listen. I took Tiffany to a clinic anyway. There was no baby. Just a massive growth. And instead of being relieved that I'd caught it before it killed her, they turned on me. In my last life, they screamed that I destroyed their golden child, and when I tried to defend myself, they shoved me, hard, and I went tumbling down the stairs. I remember the impact, the panic, the world going sideways. Then darkness. But when I opened my eyes again, the blood was gone. I was sitting in the back of an Uber, and the car was slowing as the hospital entrance came into view. No. Not again. The cheap air freshener, the damp fabric of the seat, the driver's impatient sigh, everything felt too sharp, too real. I was back on the day I died. The day I tried to save Tiffany. The driver honked lightly. "All right, folks. Mercy General Hospital. We're here." Tiffany turned to me with that familiar, entitled sneer. "Chloe, what the hell did you bring me to a hospital for? I told you I don't need a checkup. My baby is perfect." She rubbed her oversized belly like it was a trophy. My skin went cold. So this was the reset. The second chance. In my past life, I argued. I insisted. I forced her inside. This time, I didn't. I pulled out my phone and changed the destination on the app before the car fully stopped. Then I leaned forward with a bright, fake smile, like everything was a simple misunderstanding. "Hey," I said to the driver, sweet as syrup. "I think the GPS glitched. Can you check the updated address? We're not stopping here." He glanced down, frowned, then nodded. "Oh, yeah, you're right. It updated. Heading to Mommy and Me Boutique now." Tiffany blinked, confused, suspicion narrowing her eyes. I turned to her and slipped into my most supportive sister-in-law voice. "Tiffany, look at you. You're about to pop. I realized dragging you to a doctor was too much. I wanted to do something nice instead. Let's go shopping. I'm going to spoil my future nephew with designer baby clothes. You know, show some love from his favorite aunt." Her face lit up instantly. Greed smothered suspicion like a blanket. "Well, finally," she said, pleased with herself. "That's more like it. About time you started acting supportive." We spent an hour in the boutique. I bought a ridiculous pile of overpriced baby items while she waddled through the aisles like a celebrity on a red carpet. On our way out, she even grabbed a free sample of expensive formula like she'd earned it. Whatever. A few $100s was a small price to pay to keep my life this time. Because I remembered what happened last time. In my past life, the doctor had detained us with a grim expression. "If we don't operate soon," he'd said, "she may not have much time." They didn't know what the mass was at first, benign or malignant, but it was large and dangerous, and her body was already struggling. Surgery pulled out something no one wanted to talk about afterward, not a baby, but a serious medical crisis that had been growing unchecked. Tiffany couldn't handle the truth. She was terrified people would whisper. Terrified she'd be laughed at. Terrified of being seen as anything less than blessed. So she made it my fault. And my mother practically begged for someone to blame. In my past life, she looked at me with wild eyes and a voice full of fury. "You're jealous," she accused. "Your brother finally gets a son and you had to ruin it. You ruined our miracle." She called me every name she could think of, like cruelty was a sport. And when I tried to leave, when I tried to breathe, they cornered me. I remember the shove. The railing. The drop. The sickening realization that the people I'd tried to save were the ones who ended me. Not this time. This time, I was going to respect their choices. Their fate. Their delusions. Let them have it. It was pouring rain when we got back to the house. We were soaked by the time we stepped inside. My mom came out of the kitchen carrying a bowl of hot soup for Tiffany, as if she were a sacred vessel. Then she looked at me with pure venom. "Chloe, her belly is huge. Why would you drag her out in this weather? If anything happens to my grandson, you'll regret it." My brother Travis rushed in with a towel and started drying Tiffany's hair like she was royalty. His eyes kept flicking to her stomach, full of awe, like he was staring at a miracle instead of a medical emergency. He sneered at me. Just because you can't have kids doesn't mean you should take it out on her. The irony almost made me laugh, because Travis wasn't entirely wrong. Tiffany was carrying something. Just not what they thought. In my last life, I'd been married for 3 years. I wanted to focus on my career. My husband, Ethan, supported me through everything, until he couldn't anymore. After I died, Ethan blamed himself. He tried to make it right by helping my family, even when they didn't deserve it. He paid their bills, covered their needs. At one point, he even signed over our rental properties because he thought he was honoring my memory. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know what they'd done. And eventually, they took him too. To my mom and Travis, Tiffany's belly was the holy grail. Mom spent her mornings at church, her evenings burning sage and whispering prayers over strange little rituals she'd picked up somewhere online. Before dinner, she would chant, "Lord, protect the heir of our family," and then stare at Tiffany like she'd won the lottery. Then she'd say, proudly, "See, Tiffany? If I didn't pray every day, you wouldn't be growing this fast." In the past, I tried to tell her that 15 months wasn't normal. That this wasn't a miracle. That it was dangerous. Mom called me stupid. "Don't curse us," she snapped. "Her belly is pointy. That means it's a boy. You went to college and you're still clueless." Tiffany sat on the couch, rubbing her belly with smug satisfaction. "Thanks, Mom. It's all because of you." I handed my mother the boutique bag. She peeked inside and immediately frowned. "Why is this pink? You want my grandson dressed like that?" Tiffany had picked the outfits herself, but of course I was the convenient target. Tiffany smirked and slid the knife in casually. "I know, right? I wanted blue, but Chloe insisted pink was trendy." Then she turned to me, eyes gleaming. "Since you messed up, just send me $1,000. I'll buy the right ones myself. And add extra for Mom's supplements. And get Travis his cigarettes, he's been stressed." I saw right through her. She didn't want the right clothes. She wanted cash. Mom nodded fast, eager and intense. "Do it, Chloe. Look how hard she's working carrying that baby." I didn't argue. I just tapped my phone like I was doing what they asked. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. A delivery driver stood outside with another bag. "Mom," I said, smiling sweetly. "The store called. They made a mistake. They sent the blue outfits for free, and we can keep the pink ones." Mom's face lit up. She forgot about the money instantly. "See?" she said, triumphant. "Even God knows my grandson needs blue." Tiffany's smile cracked. She didn't get her payout, and she hated that. By month 15, Tiffany's appetite turned monstrous. The family-sized rice cooker wasn't enough anymore. Mom dragged out a huge catering pot and started cooking in bulk: stew, grits, anything heavy and filling. I watched Tiffany eat and felt my stomach twist. At first she used utensils. Then she didn't. She started shoveling food into her mouth faster and faster, barely chewing, swallowing like she was afraid someone might take it away. It wasn't normal hunger. It was like a bottomless pit had opened inside her. My brother was a big guy, and he didn't eat half as much as she did. Mom just kept piling food onto Tiffany's plate, grinning like this was proof of destiny. "Eat, eat," she crooned. "A big appetite means a strong, healthy boy." Then she turned and scowled at me. "Look at you. Skinny as a stick. No wonder you don't have kids. All you do is work. What's the point if you don't build a family?" I stared at Tiffany, at the way her eyes looked glazed and restless, at the frantic way her hands kept moving, searching for more. I lost my appetite. Tiffany snatched my bowl away. "You gonna eat that? You're too slow." She finished it in seconds, let out an ugly little burp, and laughed. "I'm eating for 2 men, Mom." 5 minutes later, she was hungry again. The rice wasn't cooking fast enough, so Tiffany stumbled out to the backyard garden. I followed to the doorway and froze. She dropped to her knees and started biting into raw sweet potatoes, dirt and all, like she couldn't even wait to rinse them. Her movements were frantic, desperate. Travis stood over her, rubbing her back like this was adorable. "Look at that, Mom," he called proudly. "Our kid's going to be tough." When Tiffany lifted her head, her eyes were wild, sharp and unfocused at the same time, like an animal cornered by its own hunger. A chill crawled up my spine. I took a step back. That was the moment I understood something I didn't want to say out loud. This wasn't pregnancy cravings. This was a body screaming for help while the people around her clapped like it was a talent show. And the worst part was, they liked it. They liked the spectacle. They liked the way her belly made them feel important, chosen, special. Tiffany's pain was just background music to their fantasy. By month 16, it got worse. Mom started cooking like she was feeding a football team. She dragged out a giant stockpot she used for family reunions and filled it with rice, beans, casseroles, anything dense. Tiffany would sit there and devour it with a blank stare, like the food was disappearing into a place that never filled. I watched her hands move. Faster. Rougher. Less human. Travis kept bragging. "That's my kid," he'd say, like this was proof of strength instead of a warning sign. Mom kept praising her. "Eat up," she cooed. "My grandson needs to be big and strong." Then she'd turn and slice into me. "You've never been pregnant. You don't understand. If you just hurry up and give us a baby, you'd see." I didn't even answer. I didn't have the energy to argue with delusion anymore. Tiffany leaned over and snatched my plate again. "If you're not hungry, I am." I stared at her while she ate and felt my stomach turn, not from disgust, at first, but from fear. Because she wasn't savoring anything. She wasn't even really tasting it. She was feeding something inside her that didn't care who it hurt, as long as it got more. And when the kitchen ran out, she started looking elsewhere. She'd wander toward the fridge, toward the pantry, toward anything that could be torn open. She started wanting things that weren't meant to be eaten like that, raw, cold, unfinished. The kind of cravings that made Mom's smile twitch, just for a second, before she forced it back into place. "It's fine," Mom insisted. "People eat fancy raw food at expensive restaurants all the time." She said it like she was defending a lifestyle choice. One night, Tiffany reached for something Mom had bought and Mom finally hesitated. "No," she said quickly, trying to block her. "Let me cook it first. That could make you sick." So Mom did understand danger, when it suited her. Tiffany didn't even look at her. She just shoved past, hard, like Mom was a chair in her way. Mom hit the floor with a surprised little gasp. And she turned that rage on me, instantly. "Chloe. Do something. Grab her." My heart hammered. In my last life, I would have lunged. I would have tried to hold Tiffany back, to protect her, to protect everyone. This time, I stayed exactly where I was. Because I remembered that railing. I remembered the shove. I remembered how easy it was for them to decide I was disposable. I backed away instead. Tiffany's breathing was loud, frantic, like she was fighting something inside her. Travis tried to restrain her, and she fought him too, wild, sharp, not thinking, not caring. When he yelped and stumbled back, he finally snapped and slapped her across the face. For a second, she froze. Then she blinked, like she'd just woken up. Mom scrambled up, rubbing her hip, her eyes blazing. "See?" She hissed at me. "You're useless. You only know how to run." I didn't argue. I went to my room, shut the door, and locked it. And in the quiet, I told myself the words I'd been repeating like a prayer since the reset. Respect their choices. Respect their fate. Protect your life. By month 17, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a stage where something ugly was slowly being revealed, and everyone kept pretending it was part of the show. Tiffany stopped wanting cooked food altogether. She'd stand in front of the fridge with an eerie calm, scanning shelves like she was hunting. Mom started buying strange things, insisting it was all for the baby, insisting she'd read online that the body knows what it needs. She didn't want to admit she was scared. So she called it wisdom. Neighbors started noticing. They'd see Tiffany waddling around, bloated and pale, and they'd whisper on the sidewalk. They'd ask questions in that careful way people do when they're trying not to sound like they're accusing you of something. How long has she been pregnant again? Mom would smile too wide. Bless pregnancies take time. By month 18, Tiffany wasn't eating much at all. Instead, she started waking up at night, clutching her stomach, pacing the halls like she couldn't escape herself. Her cries seeped through the walls. Long, strained, desperate sounds that made the hair on my arms rise. One morning, I saw her lift her shirt to rub her belly, and for a split second, the skin moved in a way that didn't look like a baby kicking. It looked wrong. Mom was watching too, and her face lit up like a kid seeing fireworks. "You see that?" she said, delighted. "That's movement. My grandson is strong." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because whatever was happening under Tiffany's skin didn't feel like life. It felt like a warning. The neighbors finally snapped. One evening, after Tiffany screamed through another midnight hour, someone pounded on our door. A few voices shouted from the porch. "Enough. We have kids trying to sleep. She needs a doctor." "That isn't normal, she's been like that forever." Mom burst outside like a storm, her robe flapping, her eyes manic. "Mind your business," she shrieked. "You're jealous. Jealous because my grandson is going to be somebody." They tried to reason with her. So Mom grabbed a kitchen knife. Not in some calm, calculated way, more like a woman who'd lost the plot and decided the world was the enemy. The neighbors scattered, terrified, and Mom chased them down the walkway, screaming about curses and blessings and destiny. When she came back inside, she slammed the door and pointed at me like I'd betrayed her. "If anything happens," she hissed, "it'll be because of you." That same night, Tiffany collapsed to the floor, holding her belly, screaming like she'd been ripped open from the inside. She started pounding at herself in panic, like she was trying to make the pain stop. Mom dropped to her knees in front of her, sobbing and begging. "Don't do that. Please. You'll hurt my grandson." Travis yelled at me, frantic. "Call 911. I looked at him. And in my mind, I saw the stairs again. The shove. The fall. My hands stayed still. "You call," I said, voice flat. "My phone's dead." He stared at me like I was a monster. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was just done being their sacrifice. Travis called. The ambulance came. Mom rushed out with Tiffany, still wailing, still praying out loud like her words could rewrite reality. Before she left, Mom spun back and barked at me, "Go to work tomorrow and ask your boss for an advance. Babies cost money." I didn't respond. I just stood there and watched the taillights vanish into the rain. When the house went quiet, I felt something inside me settle. Not peace. Not relief. Decision. That night, my husband Ethan came home from a long work trip, tired and travel-worn, and I threw my arms around him so hard he staggered. He laughed softly, surprised. "Chloe. What's going on?" I pulled back, searched his face like I was making sure he was real. Then I whispered, "Let's leave." His expression shifted, cautious. "Leave where?" "Anywhere," I said. "Just away from them. Away from this house. Away from all of it." Ethan had always wanted distance. He tried, gently, to get me to stop letting my family drag me into their chaos. But I kept clinging to the idea that maybe, one day, Mom would soften. Maybe Travis would grow up. Maybe I'd finally be treated like family instead of a tool. Now, I could see how stupid that hope had been. Ethan touched my cheek, eyes steady. "Are you sure?" I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. By afternoon, we were gone. We moved quietly, quickly, only what mattered, only what we could carry without looking back. Ethan's job was based up north, in a city where no one knew my mother's name or my brother's face. A place where the air didn't taste like old grudges. On the plane, I kept my phone off. When we landed, I turned it on. The screen lit up like a warning flare. 23 missed calls from Mom. I waited until I was in the back seat of Ethan's car, until the doors were shut, until I could breathe, and then I answered. Mom's voice exploded through the speaker. "Where the hell have you been? I've been calling. Do you know what you've done?" I kept my tone light, almost sweet. "Hey, Mom. I just got off a flight. How's Tiffany? How much did the baby weigh? There was a pause. Then Mom's voice trembled, not with grief, but with fury. Those animals. Those butchers. They took my babies. Babies? I echoed, keeping my voice calm. 3, she hissed. I know what I know. I dreamed it. 3 blessings. 3 heirs. And those doctors came out and told me it was 3 masses, like I'm stupid. Like I didn't carry you and know the truth. My stomach tightened. She wasn't mourning a person. She was mourning the story she'd been telling herself. They want money, Mom continued, voice rising. They're trying to scam us. They said Tiffany needs treatment. They said it'll cost. I cut in smoothly. Mom, if they're trying to scam you, don't give them a penny. If you don't pay, they can't scam you. Make them bring your grandsons back first. Silence. Then Tiffany's voice shrieked in the background, clinging to the same delusion. Exactly. No money until they give me my boys. Travis chimed in too, angry and loud. They can't just steal our kids. I stared out the window at the unfamiliar city streets and felt an icy kind of relief. Good. If they were committed to refusing help, then I wasn't the villain anymore. I wasn't the one blocking care. They were doing it to themselves. A week later, I got another call. Not from my mother. From the police. The officer's voice was polite but firm. Ma'am, your mother and brother were involved in an incident at Mercy General. They assaulted a staff member. There may be charges. We were told your family. I swallowed, slow. Are you asking me to come down there? We're asking if you'd be willing to speak to the victim about a possible resolution. I didn't hesitate. No. I'm out of town for work. And honestly, if they don't face consequences now, they'll do something worse later. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then the officer exhaled. Understood. We'll proceed. Mom and Travis spent a month in jail. Tiffany was left in a hospital bed, alone, with no one willing to cover her bills, because the moment treatment costs money, miracles suddenly aren't so convenient. She called me over and over. I ignored it until I finally answered once, just to hear the angle. Her voice was weak, bitter. Chloe. Everything's gone. The babies are gone. Travis is locked up. Your mom. I cut her off. So you lost your imaginary babies, and now you want my money? A rasping sob. I'm sick. And you were sick months ago, I said, voice cold. But you wanted a miracle, remember? And when someone tried to save you, you decided murder was the appropriate thank you. She went silent. I continued, calm as ice. When Mom gets out, I'll tell her you worked with traffickers. I'll tell her you let the babies get stolen. If you think she's cruel to me, wait until she has no use for you. I hung up. It sounds heartless, I know. But heartless is being shoved down the stairs for trying to prevent tragedy. In my last life, Tiffany's mass had been caught early. It had been removed before it turned into something worse. This time, without treatment, it didn't stay the same. 3 months later, when Mom and Travis were released, Tiffany tried to come back to the house. Mom slammed the door in her face. You couldn't even keep my grandsons safe, Mom spat, voice dripping with contempt. And now you want us to pay for you? You're useless. Tiffany clung to Travis's arm, pleading. Travis. Please. I'm sick. I didn't choose this. Travis yanked his arm away like she'd burned him. You're not bringing that problem into my house. She stumbled, fell to the porch, crying. And Mom just stood there watching, not with guilt, never guilt, with calculation. Tiffany's miracle belly had been her ticket to worship. Without it, she was nothing. And once Tiffany was nothing, Mom needed a new solution. Which meant she needed a new womb to worship. Mine. Mom called me, voice syrupy, as if we were close. Chloe. Honey. I've been thinking. Your brother's getting older. It's hard for him to start over. And after everything, I just can't bear the idea of our family line ending. I didn't respond. I waited. Mom sniffed dramatically. If you and Ethan had a baby, Just one. We could raise it as Travis's. Like it's his. You don't even like kids, right? You'd be doing the family a favor. I actually laughed. A short, ugly sound. You want me to have a baby, hand it over, and pay you to raise it? Mom's voice sharpened. Watch your tone. I felt my jaw clench. That's illegal. That's trafficking with extra steps. She lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. Don't be dramatic. Nobody has to know. I pictured her face as she said it, calm, certain, entitled. And something in me went very still. I'm not doing it, I said. Mom's patience snapped. Fine, she hissed. Then don't blame me when I stop being nice. The next morning, I woke to noises in the kitchen. Metal clinking. Pots shifting. For a second, I thought Ethan was up making breakfast. Then I turned my head and saw him sleeping beside me. My blood turned to ice. I slid out of bed and crept toward the hallway, every nerve awake. The smell hit me first, chicken broth, herbs, the exact soup my mom used to make whenever she was trying to play the loving mother. My stomach dropped. I rounded the corner and there she was. My mother. In my kitchen. Stirring a pot like she belonged there. Travis sat on my couch, head down, thumbs flying over his phone like this was a waiting room. Mom turned, beaming. Surprise. I made you soup. Drink it while it's hot. My mouth went dry. How did you get in here? Mom shrugged like it was obvious. I found your old coworker on Facebook. Got your address. Then I hired a locksmith. I didn't want to disturb you. You need rest. Healthy women make healthy babies. My hands curled into fists. Ethan stepped out behind me then, drawn by the noise. He took one look at them and his face went hard in a way I'd never seen. Who are you? He asked, voice flat. Mom launched into the performance instantly. I'm her mother. We came all this way to see our daughter. Is that a crime? Travis stood abruptly, chest puffing. Chloe, stop being dramatic. You're going to give the family a baby. That's it. He lifted a hand like he was about to strike. Ethan moved faster than I could blink. He grabbed Travis's wrist midair and twisted just enough that Travis hissed in pain and dropped his arm. Ethan's voice was low. Try that again, and you'll regret it. Mom's eyes went wide, offended, like she couldn't comprehend a man defending his wife against her rights as a mother. Ethan pulled out his phone. You have 5 seconds to leave before I call the police. Mom clutched her chest, tears appearing on command. This is what I get? After raising her? She owes me. No, I said, stepping forward. My voice surprised even me. Steady. Cold. I don't owe you a baby. I don't owe you money. And you are not welcome here. Mom stared at me, like she'd never actually seen me before. Then she snapped, venom slipping out from under the tears. Fine. Don't come crying to me when you regret it. She stormed out. Travis followed, slamming the door so hard the lock rattled. For a moment, I just stood there, shaking. Then something moved in the hallway behind us. A shadow. I turned. And nearly screamed. Tiffany stepped out of my closet. Like a ghost. She had my bag slung over her shoulder, my perfume, my jewelry, a limited edition purse Ethan had given me. Even things that had nothing to do with her. Like she was grabbing pieces of my life to patch her own. She forced a smile. Chloe. Relax. You have so much. I'm just taking a couple things. A couple? Ethan's voice was dangerously calm. Tiffany lifted her chin, defiant. It's her stuff, not yours. She can share. I stared at her. Put it back. She rolled her eyes. Seriously? You're being selfish. I'm sick. Put it back, I repeated. Every single thing. Ethan picked up a golf club from the corner, something he kept for weekend practice, and rested it casually in his hand. He didn't raise it. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, a wall. Tiffany's bravado faltered. One by one, she put my things back where she found them, muttering under her breath the whole time. When she finished, She looked at me with watery eyes, shifting tactics like a seasoned con artist. Okay. Fine. I won't take anything. But can you give me $200 to get home? I stared at her. Then I walked to the door, opened it, and pointed outside. Tiffany's mouth fell open. Chloe. I shut the door in her face. I locked it. And then I sat on the floor and laughed once, sharp and hollow, because the absurdity of it nearly broke me. They didn't come here to apologize. They came here to take. When they couldn't take my body, they tried to take my home. When they couldn't take my home, they tried to take my things. When they couldn't take my things, they tried to take my money. They never changed. They only adjusted the angle. After that, Mom didn't dare show up in person again. She just called. Chloe, she said one day, voice hard, if you won't give me a baby, then give me money. 200,000. Your brother needs to remarry. We can't let the family line end. I didn't even answer. So she shifted to a new plan. She thought she could hurt me by invading what I used to protect most, the properties Ethan had helped me buy. The rentals I managed. The financial stability I built with my own hands. Travis went to one of my units and tried to throw the tenant out. He showed up pounding on doors, yelling, "This is my sister's place. Get out." The tenant, understandably, packed up and left, furious, demanding their deposit back. Travis moved right in, dragging Mom and Tiffany with him like they were entitled to the space. What he didn't know was that I'd already sold that unit months earlier. The new owner came back from out of state, saw 3 strangers squatting in their property, and didn't hesitate. The police were called. Travis was arrested. And once again, Mom called me, shrieking like it was my fault. "How could you sell it without telling us?" She screamed. "Your brother is in jail. The owner wants $5,000 for damages. Send it now." I hung up. She drained her own savings trying to fix it. And when Travis finally got out, he didn't learn his lesson. He tried to sell other units too, dragging a realtor around, pointing at doors, promising deals, acting like he was the king of a kingdom he didn't own. Those properties had been sold, too. One building's residents, people who'd watched my family cause chaos for years, finally had enough. They didn't call the police right away. They handled it themselves. By the time officers arrived, Travis and Mom were bruised, furious, humiliated. And I was miles away, safe, sipping tea in a city that didn't know their names. That's when Mom tried a softer approach again. She called on video, eyes glassy, voice trembling. "Chloe. I heard from someone at the hospital. They said Tiffany might not make it." I said nothing. Mom swallowed dramatically. "I can't do this alone. I need to plan for the future. Your brother needs stability. If Tiffany dies, then what? What happens to our family name?" I let the silence stretch until she couldn't stand it. Finally, I sighed like I was giving in. "How much?" Her eyes sharpened instantly, like a predator hearing a gate unlatch. "1 million," she said, as if she were asking for a cup of sugar. "Your brother deserves it. He needs a new wife. A fresh start. And you should help. Your family. $1 million. I almost laughed. Instead, I smiled gently. "Okay. I have some money in a time-locked account. It'll mature soon. When it does, I'll send it." Mom's face softened into something that almost looked like relief. "I knew you'd come around," she said, voice suddenly sweet. "I knew you weren't as heartless as you act." We ended the call. And the moment the screen went dark, I forwarded the recording to Tiffany. Because in that recording, my mother admitted to everything. That she'd known all along what Tiffany had in her body wasn't 3 babies. That she'd used the stolen triplet story as a weapon, against the hospital, against Tiffany, against reality, because it was convenient. And now she was using Tiffany's illness as a bargaining chip to squeeze money out of me. I didn't send it out of kindness. I sent it because I wanted Tiffany to finally see the truth. And because I knew what Tiffany was when cornered. She wasn't a victim. She was a wildfire. Tiffany watched the recording. And something in her snapped. Days later, Chaos erupted in my old town. I heard it secondhand at first: whispers, shaky phone calls from distant relatives, local gossip threads, online buzzing with "Did you hear what happened at the house?" Tiffany showed up at Mom's place, looking nothing like the smug woman who'd once waddled through a boutique like a celebrity. She looked haunted. She confronted Mom, screaming, sobbing, demanding answers. Mom tried to deny it. Tiffany played the recording. And in that moment, Mom's mask cracked. Travis tried to intervene. Tiffany lashed out, wild with betrayal, lunging at Mom like she wanted to carve the truth out of her. Mom screamed and hid. Travis tried to restrain Tiffany. There was a struggle. A crash. A sickening thud. And Tiffany went down. Later, I was told she looked at Travis one last time, eyes wide, voice thin. "Why? Didn't you take me to the hospital sooner?" Like somewhere deep inside her, beneath the delusion and greed and performance, she'd always known. And then she was gone. Mom was arrested. Travis was questioned. Mom did what Mom always did, controlled the story. She claimed it was all her. That she'd done everything. That Travis had tried to protect her. She took the blame like it was a crown. Travis walked free. For a while. Without Mom managing his life, Travis unraveled fast. He tried calling me. Texting me. Showing up in my new city like a lost dog, demanding help like it was his right. I blocked him. Months passed. Then one night, I got a notification from an old contact back home. Travis had been arrested again. This time for something worse. Something irreversible. He was sentenced. And in the end, he ended up where my mother had ended up too. Behind bars. Together. A twisted little family reunion. Years later, after everything had settled into silence, I went back once. Not to my old house. Not to my old neighborhood. To the prison. I sat across from my mother in a sterile visitation room and studied her face. She looked smaller. Older. Like the universe had finally forced her to carry the weight of her own choices. When she saw me, her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with tears that didn't look rehearsed. "Chloe," she whispered. I was wrong. I didn't respond. She swallowed hard. "I remember it now," she said, voice shaking. "I remember pushing you. I remember the stairs." My chest tightened. So she had come back too. My mother looked down at her hands, then back up at me like she was staring at a ghost. In my other life, I thought sons were everything. I thought they were my security. My proof. My power. I thought if I worshipped Travis hard enough, life would reward me. She let out a broken sound, half laugh, half sob. And what did it get me? A grave I dug with my own hands. She reached toward the glass like she wanted to touch me through it. "If you ever have a child," she said softly, "have a daughter. Love her. Don't do what I did. Don't turn your love into a weapon." Her eyes glistened. "I didn't want to be that kind of mother," she whispered. "But my mother was that way. And her mother before her. I thought it was normal. I thought it was survival." She looked at me, pleading. "I'm sorry." I stared at her for a long time. Then I said, quietly, "Your apology came too late. Because sorry doesn't undo a fall. Sorry doesn't erase a life stolen. Sorry doesn't fix the way a child learns to shrink herself just to survive in her own home." A year later, I got a notice that their sentences had been carried out. I didn't go to see them. I didn't cry. 7 days after that, I did something else. I bought a stack of symbolic $1,000,000 bills, novelty paper people used for rituals back where my mother grew up, the kind she used to swear would carry messages to the dead. I drove out to a quiet place, lit a small metal bowl, and watched the paper curl into ash. "Mama," I whispered, voice steady. "Here's your $1,000,000. The smoke rose and vanished into the cold air. No blessings. No miracles. No heirs. Just consequences. Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, solid and warm and real. "Chloe," he murmured against my hair, "you're safe. No one will ever do that to you again. Not as long as I'm here." I leaned back into him and watched the last ember die. For the first time in a long time, the world felt quiet. And the quiet didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom.